And I'm sitting there watching this thing for 10 minutes. I'm just staring at this thing and it's hovering there. And I think to myself, wow, this is a UFO.
Hello everyone. I wanted to make this video because someone sent me a link last week to an interview done on the radio show by Grant Cameron, who is a UFO researcher who's also now into researching consciousness, which I mentioned in my last video. Yet another example of a UFO researcher who eventually becomes involved in New Age philosophy and New Age research. So I did want to apologize for the audio quality of my previous video. I know a lot of you were complaining that it was difficult to hear, so I will try my best to rectify that going forward. Hopefully you can hear what I'm saying clearly enough. So basically, I'm just going to play a segment. It's about a 50-minute long interview overall. I'm going to play about 10-15 minutes of it, somewhere in there. But I wanted to set the stage, so to speak, going into this. So it really is just to serve as a rather telling example, a very prime example, I would say, as to how the UFO narrative, this UFO deception that many of us have been talking about for quite some time, how it really does fit into this broader New Age spirituality and the New Age deception, and the concept of pantheism or panpsychism, monism, quantum mysticism. I mean, the whole 9 yards. It's all tied together. And so what we have here is we have the story of a guy who, he doesn't share his name, and supposedly he comes from a long-standing Hollywood family. So on the one hand, yes, with things like this, you have to take it with a grain of salt, and we can't 100% verify that this guy is who he says he is. But when you listen to the interview, I think you can just decide for yourself if it sounds legit or not. And the thing is that even if it was just a complete fabrication and it was all made up, then in the very least you still have to acknowledge that the message being pushed is the same New Age pantheistic message, that it's propaganda for that message either way. But this account starts with him talking about his first experience seeing a UFO over his house, and he does mention that he had seen a documentary by Stephen Greer the year before, and because of that, he then proceeded to adopt the methodology put forward by Greer in terms of using meditation and laser pens and things to summon the UFOs back again. And you see that he just develops a daily routine of engaging with these orbs and these objects. And then it just escalates to the point where at some point he has what can only be described as a transcendent experience, very much comparable to the same types of transcendent experiences that people who have done DMT or ayahuasca or using meditation or a variety of other altered states describe. This feeling of overwhelming love and peace and unity and just this inexpressible transcendent experience, and he actually calls it a download. And the information that is downloaded through this experience is, surprise, surprise, the message that everything is one, that everything is connected. And then he's eventually given a word by these entities. He actually gets to the point where he is essentially telepathically communicating these entities and praying to them, essentially, and he can see them at will. And then they lead him to the topic of biocentrism. And as he looks into the topic of biocentrism, he's led to reach out to the author of this book on the topic and eventually to make a documentary on this topic. And so, all in all, you see how an engagement with this UFO phenomena, with just a minimum amount of the interpretive lens provided by Greer, in a very short amount of time takes somebody from having no belief in UFOs or the paranormal to being an advocate and being, essentially an evangelist for the core New Age message of pantheistic monism. So once again, we can see this is what the quote-unquote alien entities are preaching. This is their message.
And I'm walking down my driveway, and I'm picking up the trash cans, and I'm turning around, I'm walking back. And as I'm walking back to the house up the driveway, I kind of casually look up in the sky, and I see above the house, maybe, I don't know, couple 100 feet above the house, I see this thing that looks like a giant walnut sitting in the sky. It's got these pieces of metal that are coming off each side of it that are look like an X. So basically the body is like a walnut with a piece of metal on each side that's sort of in an X pattern. It's bigger than a helicopter. It's just hovering there in the sky. It's not making any sound. And, it's definitely not a plane. And I'm sitting there watching this thing for 10 minutes. I'm just staring at this thing and it's hovering there. And I think to myself, wow, this is a UFO. I'm having this realization. And as I have that realization, the thing lights up golden, like a really kind of a bright LED golden color where the entire body goes golden. And I had, I was just kind of total in shock and amazement. And as I'm saying, wow, UFO, sort of commenting in my head more and more, the thing starts to kind of do this pattern, where the entire body of it starts to literally do, if you're looking at a computer screen and you're typing in basically symbols, the entire thing goes from sort of, wait, let me back up for a second. So I'm looking at this thing before, and before I sort of realize, hey, that's a UFO, I'm looking at it, I'm seeing the sun shining off one side. So I see one side kind of glinting in the sun, which is like metal color. Other side is dark. So then after speeding forward, when I say, oh, it's a UFO, it lights up golden. And then as I have this more chatter in my head about what I'm seeing to myself, it starts doing these patterns, like these golden patterns where the entire craft starts to literally do kind of these weird symbols in golden bright color. So I'm watching this thing for literally 25, 30 minutes, having this kind of interaction, totally blown away, totally it's a surreal moment because you're sitting there standing in front of your house in the middle of the day, blue skies, cars are driving down the street, and you're staring at a UFO in the sky. And yeah, so I had this experience and I saw it and I watched it for 25, 30 minutes and it all stayed in the same place. It didn't move, no sound. And, I kind of realized, oh my God, I got to get back to work, but I can't leave this moment. And then it slowly started to kind of drift away up into the sky. And that was basically the first moment of how this all started. So I rambled a little bit, but that's how it started. Prior to that, maybe a year before this happening, I had discovered the Stephen Greer documentaries, really absolutely love those. And then I think I saw the second one, or maybe that was the first one was a couple years. And then the second one came the year before this experience. And I saw that. And I was so blown away by these experiences, the film, and I remember I'd showed them to my family and they were like, I don't know. I think it's all fake, BS, whatever.
Yeah.
And so basically I'd seen these movies and I remember in those movies basically Stephen doing this, meditation, how you call them in and using the laser light. So basically that next day I ran out to, after having my experience, I ran out to the store and I bought myself this laser pointer just in case, I didn't know what would happen. And so that following night, basically it's around 9 o'clock at night and I'm thinking, okay, I got to take out the trash. So I go outside, I take out the trash, and I think to myself, you know what? I'm going to try this basically to see what happens, do a little meditation, do the laser pointer. So I do that, and I do the meditation, and then I do the laser pointer in the sky, and then 5 or 10 minutes later, all of a sudden, bigger than a helicopter, I see this strobe light, maybe 500 feet above our house, this big strobe circle of light. It does 5 or 6 of these things. I'm screaming to my wife, get your butt out here, get out here, Danny, get out here. She comes running out. And she's walks out. She's like, what? I go, look up at the sky. And she looks up and this thing does 14 or 15 of these strobes. She's like, wait a minute. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I don't want to know. I don't like this. I'm going inside. I don't know what I'm looking at, and runs inside, and I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing? This is for me, it was how could you not just be totally engrossed with this thing? So it did that. It did 5 or 6 or 8 of them for me. And then 14 or 15 for her. It was it moved and it did, 50 feet here and then strobe. So, and then she ran inside. So that was that night. And so basically a long story short is, the following day, now I'm okay, I can't let this go, So the following day, that night around dusk, I do the meditation, I do the laser pointer, and it happens again. And I have these strobes, like, basically you'll, maybe 500 feet up, you see like a strobe of white light in a perfect circle, like a couple of them, then it moves and it does. So that kind of thing literally went on, Grant, every single night for a couple months. And then what happened is it started to move forward. It started to get more close and personal. And so what would happen is, I made a ritual every night, like around dusk, 6:30, 7 o'clock, I would do the meditation, do the laser, and I would have the strobes. And then what happened is a couple months into it is I would do the meditation, the strobe, and then I would see, instead of the strobe light, I would see maybe 1,000 feet up, like a dot of light fly across the entire horizon within 2 seconds. But then you would see something would pop out of the back of this thing, 1,000 feet up. It would be a little like orb, a golden orb, usually golden or white, would pop out of it. This thing would be 1,000 feet up. This golden orb would come flying all the way down from the sky. Literally, I'm standing in my driveway, looking at our house, looking above our roof. The thing would fly all the way down to maybe 2 or 3 feet above the roof, sit there, and I would be hit with this. You know what, Grant? You get hit with this emotion. It's like the most profound, loving feeling that you've ever felt in your life times a zillion. You get hit with this emotion. It's this loving feeling, but then in the emotion is information. And I'm not talking about technical information, how to build rocket ships or how to make 0-point energy or whatever. All those things are cool, but it was more like a total experience. It was like if you had a 4-hour conversation with somebody and it was the best conversation of your life and you digested that conversation, you felt uplifted and expanded. It was all of that in 2 or 3 seconds. The orb would come above the roof. I would stand there. I would look at it. I would be absolutely terrified, not from it, but because I had, imagine having an experience that you had zero reference to, that you could not look up on Google, that you could not replicate from any point in your life and history. It was a totally unknown object, a totally unknown experience. I didn't know if I was going to get eaten, taken away, the house was going to be, I didn't know what, like a laser or a torpedo sandwich in my back end. I didn't know. So I'm sitting there. And this thing, it flies down, and I'm watching this thing fly down from 1,000 feet. It's a golden orb. I'm thinking to myself, holy Jesus, this thing is coming to me to meet me. And I'm like excited, overwhelmed, and terrified, viscerally, like life or death. Lands there, and you get blasted with this feeling like the most profound cradle a baby feels from its mother, the first ever time it ever feels that, beyond that, and this information, this experience, like everything. And the experience for me was everything is connected. We are everything. There is no separation. Everything is alive. Everything is, moving in circles with us, connected. We are moving with the atmosphere, the planets, the waves, the wind is speaking to you, whispering sweetness in your ear, telling you, you're my soul, brother. You're my friend from a distant life. Everything, like these crazy kind of soul experiences that you're getting on a visceral level that you can't process with your brain, but your soul knows it and your body feels it and your body has wisdom and your body receives it and you get this experience. All happens in 2 or 3 seconds. And then what happens, Brent, it's sitting there above your roof and it slowly disappears and it's still there, but you can't see it anymore, but you can feel it. And so I had those experiences. Those happened a bunch of times for a couple of months. And also what they would do is, they would do that and then basically disappear. And then I thought, okay, it's over. And then I'd turn around to kind of walk, maybe around the house to go into the backside door. And I'd look up in the sky and literally 10 feet above, maybe 15, 20 feet above my head, from left to right, maybe, 20 feet across, 10 feet above my head, out of the nothingness, you'd hear this, and you'd see this white electric sparkle. Then you'd see this golden fireball the size of a baseball would literally come out of nothingness, shoot across the sky, 20 feet up, 10 or 15 feet across your point of view, into nothingness and disappear. And that was the way they said goodbye. That was like, hey, buddy, we love you. Here's another little bonus donut for you. And they'd show that, and they've done that multiple times. And so I know they do this as a way to say goodbye. And they also, if they can't show up where like it's a craft kind of thing, because for whatever reasons they have, they'll do this as a way to say hello. Like there have been many nights that I've been out there and haven't seen them. And then all of a sudden, guess what? There's a little crackle fireball, golden white fireball that flies across the roof. And I'm like, I knew you were there. So they do these things. They do these other things that I was experiencing, what I call Tinkerbell lights, basically, you know, Tinkerbell, the Disney Tinkerbell. So you know when you watch Tinkerbell, right? So you know when you're watching the Wonderful World of Disney, when the opening credits, and you see Tinkerbell fly across the screen, and all this little fairy dust kind of like pops. They have this thing where they do that too. So basically, you'll be standing out there in the middle of the night, nothingness, and all of a sudden you hear like, and you see these little sparkles of light and fairy dust kind of popping, like, you know, up in a line, and then like a little zigzag, and this little pops of fairy. I mean, it's crazy, but it happens, and it's real, and you're seeing this, and the only thing it looks like I could compare it to is Tinkerbell. So that went on from, you know, I'm trying to condense this all because so much has happened. So that went on for months, and you know, in the first couple months, I'm driving through Malibu, and I'm coming back from the city back to our house, and I'm driving through a canyon. It's during the daytime. I'm like, okay, all right, give me something. I know you're real, but if you're really real, you know, give me something. I mean, I knew they were real, but I don't even know why I said I know you're real. But just I said, okay, if I know if you're real, give me something I don't know about that's concrete, that I have no idea about. So all of a sudden a word pops into my head, biocentric. And I'm like, wow, biocentric. I have no idea what that is, biocentric. So I wrote it down, plus another name came through, which was the name of the being that I actually now am connected to. There are a couple of them, but one in particular, I only know his name. But so biocentric. So I go home and I Google biocentric, and I look up, and I find out that the world's leading stem cell researcher, Dr. Robert Lanza, has just written a book called Biocentricism, How Everything is Consciousness, how consciousness, and basically they're calling him like a genius. It's a Pulitzer Prize type of thing, a reimagining of humanity's connection to everything. So basically biocentricism is everything is conscious, how through consciousness man can unlock the doorway to the cosmos and beyond. And so I was like, and then the definition of biocentric, the Wikipedia one, is even more specific to the experience, how man has no inherent right over anything else. Everything is alive and conscious. Everything has equal value. Everything has equal place at the table of choices, the cosmic choices, if you want to call that. You know, everything is entitled to pursue their way of life and not be infringed upon, and everything is consciousness and alive and connected, and you know, goes on. So basically I was so blown away by this, and some of the future messages that I got following that experience a couple of days later was like, they were like, look, we want you to make contact with Dr. Robert Lanza. We want you to do a documentary on biocentricism and consciousness in general.